All right. I don't know about you, but probably have the only rabbinic intern in history that puts the books out at the
I'm
time.
not a
Is it
rabbinic
better?
intern.
It's not an intern.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. To be.
Yeah.
I'm lobbying for him right now.
You're lobbying right now?
Yeah, why not?
You know, it's a good internship.
I've been mentoring him. I said, make yourself indispensable. Little did I know.
That he was gonna do, yeah?
Yeah. You gotta help the youngsters.
I wish we had more things set up so that people like wanted to.
Oh, look at, you had to move all of these over here? Was it all set up?
No,
Oh,
it's
that's
not.
good.
No, just, but we gotta get to the books for sure.
That's fine.
We're all getting used to the new,
It's
where stuff
it's
can
like
go,
anything else.
it's
At first it's difficult, and then
Yeah.
it becomes easier. They did it for a reason. They want to have the flexibility of doing something.
for
I think
sure.
the setup is less than to be desired. It's too, when you're sitting behind it,
Yeah.
it's meant for kids, I think.
These tables or the ones with,
The new ones.
you think they're meant for kids?
Yeah, because there's not enough room to stretch
To
out.
like stretch out and stuff? Yeah. The old tables were literally falling apart, so. this
Oh,
one
yeah,
needed
I don't mind
something.
anything.
I think
I'm not a member, I'm not paying much, just $1 a day when I show up. I don't complain.
Yeah.
If you don't pay, you can't complain, you know?
But you're right, that it's still, I think there was gonna be something left to be desired about
Well, it needs to
whatever.
be adjusted, but Rabbi Schatz in front of all of us, I teased her, I said, put it away. She showed us how to, because none of us knew how you
Yeah.
would do that. She just did it like in 4 minutes flat.
Exactly.
Maybe 6,
Yeah.
but she'll get down to 3 or 4.
She'll get it done, yeah.
That was very, I told her, keep your day job, but you know.
I really have room this table just.
Yeah, I'm pretty brutal.
Yeah.
We have more room for your feet that way.
Yeah, it's certainly more flexible than what we had before.
Absolutely.
Making sure everyone's in here, that's how. So you know, Safaria got me this week.
What?
Safaria,
What about it?
the
I know
process
what
that
it is.
I know,
What?
it got me this week. It really like,
Got you meaning
I don't know.
good or bad?
In a bad way, it got me. It really messed with
Bothered
me.
you?
No, it's just messing with me, and now we're gonna have to use all of our papers. Because there's a mode in Safaria that says that you wanna change all the divine names on the paper so that it doesn't have God's name fully written out, which I always select. So I selected the thing that said, don't show God's name in the text, and it did it.
Oh.
But not in the English side of the translation. This is yours? Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, you're way above my pay grade. I can't even send a picture, let alone manage House Safari.
Wow.
Way above my pay
It's a lot easier to manage than 14,000 books. But I still have them. Shabbos.
You know, it's amazing what the technology.
In Rabbi Quickfeld's and my time, at the seminary, it was very common to have bought an entire CD-ROM, because that's what it was
Yes.
at the time, called the Bar Ilan Project. And it was the closest thing to Safaria before there was Safaria. It was great.
Hey, I go back to microfilm at the.
Microphone. And granted, it was in my much younger days, but I do remember having to research for a biography of like a senator, going to the little, through the.
Different world. Now Google is God. I ask it how the weather's doing on the hour to see, if it's getting worse or better. It's unbelievable.
Well, maybe Google's somewhat reliable.
Well, it's like anything else, so.
Now it's actually less reliable if you happen to get caught. It's like when you see it caught up in the advert advertisements, now you can get caught up in the AI by accident. You're looking
Yeah.
for real results, and you can get caught up in the AI summary.
Google circa 2006
I
was
don't want the
amazing.
mic by me, I'm gonna put it by the rabbi, the rabbi to be. Oh, man, nice and early, good. 4:40. 4:45. Yeah, that's good.
Did I bring my boy? No. 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 That's okay. I have two kids.
Huh?
I have two kids.
Two kids?
I have two kids, yeah. Only two, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
2 kids is a normal amount of kids.
Pretty normal amount of kids.
My mother
That's
has
the amount I want.
my mother has 3 kids, and
I'm one.
I think that's enough.
You don't like
You have to
sharing?
understand.
I'm an
don't
only
care.
child,
The-
I think it's enough.
The Chabad that I went to because there was no Hillel or any like Jewish.
Yeah.
The Chabad that I went to, 10 children. 7 when I like started. Now they have 10 children. Too many.
I think that's too many. One is enough for me, but.
I mean, I can understand the like from the Chabad perspective. Their first 3 children were daughters, so I can understand. Okay, let's at least get a son somewhere in there. But
Yeah.
10 children is too many.
10 is too many.
My nephew has 5. He married at 20.
A friend of mine used to work at a daycare, and the parents of these 2 children were incredibly neglectful, so she wound up adopting them. And then she got pregnant with her ex-husband, and they were expecting a 3rd child. And they get news that, oh, nope, you're having twins. And then, like a month later, actually, no, you're having triplets.
Whoa,
So
That's
going,
a lot of children.
that's too many kids. Too many kids.
it's expensive.
Very. She inherited a ranch from her grandfather. She is not a dairy, I should say. Which I would
Yeah,
love
I have
to
2
live on a dairy.
nieces that each have 3. And one other nephew is single. So it's 11 great nephews and nieces. Makes me happy. I'm 2,000 miles away, so I'll see him on Passover. Gotta book my flight. I'm trying to remember that. Getting toothpaste at Costco. Favorite place. Gotta make sure I get it up in time for Minha tomorrow morning.
Can't get up at 7:30.
Tomorrow's regular 8 o'clock.
Tomorrow's regularly 8 o'clock, so you get up at 7:30.
I usually get 7:30. I like to have breakfast before sometimes.
Oh, that's the issue. See, I can roll out of
Because the
bed.
day gets to be too long, because I check my emails too, and I don't do any on Shabbos, and cut out usually Friday afternoon, so I have not that many, actually, I did check it yesterday night.
I can roll out of bed, get to Minyan, then I can go home and shower. I mean,
I
depends.
cut the showering to 3 days a week.
If I wake up at 6 a.m., which I do on weekdays,
Yeah, that's, to me, that's the best time. I rarely make it. I always at 6, I go, I can sleep another half hour.
that's what happens, yeah.
I gotta get out of that habit. But,
If I wake up at 6, I'm like, oh, I gotta sleep another half hour, I wind up sleeping another hour and a half.
I put in some laundry in my washing
at the start of your.
Get us started, but would the two of you be my gabaim at the Torah if, especially if I have to pinch it, I appreciate it.
I'm always up to this.
We have enough.
Yeah, we certainly have enough, it's not the issue, it's just a matter of.
Change the situation.
Where's one of these?
I remember my cancellation.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're going to begin on page 214 in Sidor Lev Shalem. Asher yishvi v'itecha, od yelelu chasecha, asher yamshakach lo, asher yamsharon elecha. Tehillat Adonai Yidber pi, v'yivarech kol basar shem kodesh le'olam va'ed, v'anachnu nevarech yamei tavi ad olam, hallelujah, u'alei tzion kohel shavei v'eshvei kom ne'madon.
V'yeta kadosh yoshavti lo Yisrael. V'karzel ze ve'amar kadosh kadosh kadosh. V'tisaini ruach v'shmacharai kol rash gadol. Baruch Adonai mimekomo u'talad. Adonai lo k'lam v'Adonai. V'yivtechu v'chayudei shemecha ki lo asafta dorshecha Adonai. Adonai chovetz amanzi kol yidil sharavi adir. Yikata v'yikata shemei rabba v'yamadi rakirtei v'yamlik malchutei v'chayechot v'yamechon v'chayidecho beit Yisrael v'galav yizman kari v'imru amein yehi shemei rabba v'varach le'lam almei hamaya yivarach v'yishapach v'barich v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudesha v'erichu le'lam inkol birchata v'shirata tishbechata v'nechamata Tamiram v'yama v'yimeru amein Ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chasacha Anini be'emet yishecha Vayehi b'zohar Vayomer Moshe Come Adonai v'yikutzoi lecha v'yikutzoi lecha Initzim tisei Torah We're at Parshat Mishpatim. If you're in the Eitz Chaim Chumash, we are on page 456. And you could also follow along in the back of the weekday Sidorim. V'tigale v'tere malchutole nu bisman karov yachom plechatenu ufletatamo beit Yisrael lechenu chasru rachamim ratzon v'nomar amein hakol havu godel Eloheinu shnu chavod la Torah tamod. I thought you were looking for one.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אלה המשפטים אשר תשים לפניהם כי תקנה עבד עברי 6 שנים יעבודו בשביעית יצא לחופשי חינם אם בגפו יבוא וגפו יצא עם בעל אישה הוא ויצא אשתו עמו אם אדוני ביתן לו אישה וילדה לו בנים ובנות האישה וילדיה תהיה לאדוניה והוא יצא בגפו עמו יאמר העבד אהבתי את אדוני את אשתו ואת בניי לא יצא חופשי והגישו אל אדוניו אל האלוהים והגישו אל הדלת אל המוזב ורצה אדוניו את אוזנו במרצע ועבדו לעולם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Page 458, verse 7.
Yamod.
Yitzchak ben Yeshua.
Yitzchak ben Yeshua, Laliah Shniha. On verse 12,
7.
7.
Where's the wrap?
Baruch es Adonai Baruch. Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabad mikol amim v'nasan lanu es Toraso. Baruch atah Adonai noseinu Torah.
Amen. וכי ימכור איש את ביתו למעלה תצא כצאת עבדים אם ראה בעיני אדוני אשר לא ידע והפתח לעם נוכרי לא משול למרוך רע בבגדו בה ואם לבנו ידנה כמשפט הבנות יעשה לה אם אחרת ייקח לו שאירה כסותה ועונתה לא יגרע ואם שלושה אלה לא יעשה לה ויצא חינם אין כסף.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasan lanu Torah emes v'chayei olam notah b'socheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noseinu Torah.
Amen. Sure.
Yamod, Marina Rabbeinu, Adam Moshe ben
Michael Balea.
Michael Valeah, Laliah Shlishit.
Baruch et Adonai Hamborach. Baruch Adonai Barach Lelam ve'Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. מכה איש ומת מות יומד ואשר לא צדע והאלוהים מן על ידו ושמתי לך מקום אשר ידעו שמה וכי יזיד איש על רעהו להגו ואמר אם מזבחי תיקחנו למות ומכה אביו ואמו מות יומד וגונב איש ומחרו ונמצא בידו מות יומד ומקלל אביו ואמו מות יומד וכי יריבון אנשים והיכה איש את רעהו באבן ובאגרוף ולא ימות ונפל למשכב אם יקום והתהלך בחוץ על משענתו וניקה המכה רק שבטו ייתן ורפו ירפא. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Yeshar Koach Yamod, Amagvia Talmud, Hagolelet. Please rise for the lifting and wrapping of the Sefer Torah. So you'll come on in here and spot him.
Those Torah, Asher, Samoshe, Mei B'nei Yisrael, Elohi Adonai, Yad Moshe.
I know we have at least one El Male to be said today. Does anyone else here in the room have have an El Male to be said this week? Okay, so we'll turn to you, Joey. And when I pause, you'll give me the name of your maternal grandmother and the
Great.
El Male. El Male Rachamim Shochain Bamrumim Hamse Menucha Nechuna Tachat Kanfei Ashchina V'malot Kedoshim Hujorim Kizora Rekia Mashirim Lenishmat.
It's all about Baruch Barachel.
It's about Baruch Rachel Shal Nechali Holama Biganei Tente Menuchata Ana Bal Rachamim Asirei Habeseter Knafechali Olamim Utzor Bitzor Chayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachlata V'Tanuach V'Shalom Am Nishkava V'Nomar Amen. Joey, is there a particular story or memory of your grandmother you'd like to share?
Oh yes. My brother and I would when we'd hang out at her house, we'd play games like Rummy Q and War, or she called it Fight. You know, the card game War. She called it Fight. She thought that was a nicer word for some reason. And then we'd also hit the tennis ball against the wall of her garage. She was into tennis as well, so yeah. And then also remember one time I shared this memory at her funeral actually, where I once played War, or again she called it Fight with her, and I beat her really badly and it was my fault too, because I did a bad job shuffling the cards. I all the higher ones, she all the lower ones. So I won by a bunch over her because of that.
I hope you have playful and wonderful memories.
I do.
With your grandmother. And
Thanks.
Baruch. May her memory be a blessing to all those who knew
Thanks.
her. I'll take the tour from you, Joey. And we'll continue.
Yeah, she made it to the age of 95 3/4.
May we all, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes, I heard a rabbi. Yeah. Is there another Molly? Hang on, let me speak up.
I have one.
I heard and I have one. Maybe somebody can. I think Rabbi Klinkfeld will be my emissary and tell me who that is. Oh, Tybal, is that you who has an
Yes.
you said?
For my father,
For your father, okay. And Tybal, speaking rather loudly, can you tell me what your father's name was, his Hebrew name?
Shlomo Yehoshua ben Chaya Fega.
Shlomo Yehoshua ben Chaya Fega. Okay, got it. Hemali rachamim, shochein pamramim, hamasei menucha, nechona tachat kanfei shechina, b'malo kedoshim, utorim kazor rekiam, asirim lenishma, Shlomo Yehoshua ben Chaya Fega, shelach liolama, v'ganei tentei menuchata nabal harachamim, hasirehu b'seiter knafecha leholamim, utzor bitzor chayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al nishkavo, v'nomar amen. Tybal, if you speak up particularly loudly and share one short memory of your father, we'd love to hear it.
So he was the youngest of 10, only American born, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and he was the only one of 10 who inherited a voice. He was a cantor, and so music was my first way into Judaism because of my father.
May your memories of him and of his voice continue to be for a blessing. Thank you for speaking up. Is there anyone else before we continue with the service? Okay. So we are on page 221. Uvnucho, Yomar Shavadonai Revot Alfei Yehusrael. השבינו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדיש ימינו כקדם. ייכתב ויקדש מרבה ימה דברה כרתבים לכמה כותב בחיכון וימכון חייתו כל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קרבי ואמרו אמן. איש מרבה מברך לעולם ומיום היה יפרח וישבח ויפר וישמע ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירם ביומה וימרו Amen. The whispered private Amidah for Shabbat afternoon begins on page 223. If you haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. The repetition begins on page 223. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Hayel HaGadol HaGibor VaNorah Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Yaakov Zocher Chasdei Avot Umivigo El Livnei Bneihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Foked Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Uvoked Tzara Atah Gibor Lelam Adonai Mechiyim Mitim Matarav Leoshia Mashiva Ruach Umoridak Hashem Mechol Kachayim B'Chesed Mechayim Mitim Barakamim Rabim Samech Novelim V'Rafecholim Matir Asurim Kayim Munato Lishanei Afar Micham Hochabal Kivurotum Mita Melach Melech Mimitum Chayim Matzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah L'chayim Mitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayim Mitim Nikadesh Shimcha Balam Kishem Shemach Tishim Otov Yishmei Marom Kakatu Al Yad Nuyecha V'Karazel Zev Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvah V'Loch L'Aretz Kevoto L'Matam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimekom Ov Divrei Kodesh Kakatu V'Leimor Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Eloheich Zion L'Dor Vato ador. Hallelujah. Lidor ador nagikodecha unetzach netzachim kedushatecha nakdish. Vishichacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yimushalam ba'ed. Yemel chadol v'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai el hakadosh. Ata echad v'shimcha echad umi ke'amcha Yisrael. Mi ke'amcha Yisrael. Koyechad ba'aretz tiferet gedula v'ateret Yeshua. Yom nucha uktusha le'amcha natata. Yom nucha uktusha le'amcha natata. Avraham Yagel Yitzchak Yiranein Yaakov uvanav yanuchuvo Yaakov uvanav yanuchuvo Menuchat ava undava Menuchat emet ve'emunah Menuchat shalom v'shalva v'hashket v'vetach Menuchat shlema shataharot teba Yakiru vanecha v'yideu ki mitecha ki menuchatam Ve'menuchatam yaktishu et shemecha Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu Ritzei v'menuchateinu Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha V'tein chalkenu b'toratecha Sabeinu mituvecha V'samachenu b'shuatecha V'taher libeinu livtecha v'emet V'anchilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'yavav ratzon Shabbat kodechecha V'yanuchu v'Yisrael V'kadeshei shemecha V'aruch atah Adonai V'kadesh ha'Shabbat Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu Melech Yisrael V'tfilatam V'shevet avodah li v'beitecha V'tfilatam v'ahavat tekabel b'ratzon V'tfila ratzon Tamid avodat Yisrael amecha V'techazena hineinu V'shuchad l'zim rachamim Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir shechlinato letzion Modim anachnu lach shatav Hatov kilo chalurachamecha v'ramachem kilo tamu chasadecha me'olam kivinu lach v'yal kulam yibarach v'yitramam shemcha malkeinu tamid le'olam v'ahed v'chol achim yimdu chasad v'yalu et shemcha be'emet shal yishoteinu v'ezrateinu selah Baruch atah Adonai Hatov shemcha ulchanei lehodot Shalom rav al Yisrael amecha v'yal kol yishvei tevel tasim le'olam ki atahu melech adon lechol ha'shalom v'tov beinecha levarech adamcha Yisrael b'chol eitu chol shahah V'yishlomecha Baruch atah Adonai V'varech et amo Yisrael b'shalom Tzidkatcha tzedek leolam v'tortcha emet V'tzidkatcha Elohim ad maram Asher sita kedolot Elohim michamocha Tzidkatcha keharehel Mishpatecha tom rabah Adam uvheima Joshia Adonai Yikadav yikadash mirabah Yomad yirak yirtivim lichon Tevech yichon V'yimechon uchayidu Chol Beit Yisrael Bakalach V'zman kariv V'imru hamein Yishami rabah v'rak leolam U'meyom haya Yibarach v'shabach v'bar v'tramam v'tnasei V'tadar v'talei v'talav Shmei dekudisha Leila min kol berkata v'shira tatush v'chata v'nekwata Tamiram be'ama v'imru amein Yikabal tzalot onu ton dekol Yisrael Kadam avahon divishmai havimru amein Yesh lamarab amijamai v'chayim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amein Osei shalom b'imramav Hu yasei shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amein Aleinu 231 Aleinu l'shabech l'adon ha'kol l'teiked Kakad Kakatu b'toratech Adonai yimloch le'olam v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shmo echad Mourner's Kaddish 232 Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'yamechon u'chayei techol beit Yisrael ba'gala u'yizman kari v'imru amen Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach Le'olam u'lamei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Yesher koach to Rabbi Kligfeld, who is one of at least two Kligfelds. We'll hear a reading from the Torah this coming week, a pre-Mazel Tov. It's really exciting that this like truly launches the week of Mishpatim, a long time coming, and I think Lev has known his parsha for approximately 7 years, so it's going to be a great reading on Shabbat morning. We're going to pause to nosh a little bit, so please grab yourself something to nourish, and then we'll come back and learn together. You're more than welcome to use a chumash, but really our studies are not reliant upon it today. I'll pass out sheets in just a few minutes. Okay. If you do want to follow along with the very first source in particular in the Chumash, I'll tell you where we are. We're on page 475 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It's the middle of chapter 23, verse 27. We'll get there in a moment. Before the text, the context, where I'm starting to teach from in Parshat Mishpatim, we're getting some previews of the years to come from God. Notably, the clergy of Temple Beth Am are currently studying from the Mishnah Masachet Bikurim about first fruits, and some of the texts that are core to our studies are here on page 474, part of the fifth aliyah for next week's Torah reading, in the full Shabbat morning Torah reading. And some of the stuff that we're learning about categorically in Parshat Mishpatim are just the laws to come. For example, these first fruits, the Bikurim. Right? When you possess the land, when you've inherited it, you will go and give of your first fruits, and you will offer them in honor of God, in gratitude to God for providing them in the land and all that. And there's a little bit of preview storytelling as well. We know from the beginning of Bereshit that God likes to tell God's people where the story is headed, where things are going. And I think there's a particular tone to some of the language used in Parshat Mishpatim around this preview storytelling, what is to come in the spaces, places, and among the peoples whom they're going to meet along the way. At the bottom, let me preempt and read a little bit from the 23rd verse. Ki yelech malachi lefanecha, when my angelic representative force goes out before you, and before you on this march, on this journey all through the wilderness. Ve'heviacha el ha'emori ha'chiti va'prizi va'knani ha'chivi va'yevusi va'hichadtiv. You're going to be brought, the angel's going to lead you, basically, is going to come before you and is going to approach all of these different people you're going to encounter along the way, and I annihilate them. Lo tishtachave leloehem velo ta'avdam velo ta'aseh kema'asehem. Don't bow down to their gods, don't worship like they worship their gods, and do not do as they do. Ki hares tehorsem, this like duplicative word, well, I'll finish translating the sentence. Ki hares tehorsem v'shaber teshaber matzavotehem. Two doubling of languages. You're going to really tear them down and really smash them to bits. So not only don't follow their laws, but also smash them to bits. Okay. Ve'avadtem et Adonai Elohechem, uverach et lachmecha ve'et memecha ve'hasiroti machala mi kirbecha. And you should, rather, after you're done smashing all these idols, in the meantime, you should be serving the Lord your God. God is the one who blesses your bread and also your water, right? God satiates and quenches thirst. And left off in the middle of the verse, and also God will remove like plagues or any sort of sickness from your midst. Lo tiyeh mishakela va'akara be'artzecha, a beautiful promise that no woman should miscarry. There will be no barren woman in your land. Et mispar yamecha amale, I will literally fill the counting of your days. A beautiful idea also, just the fulfilling that numerousness of the people, and a nice bookend to the beginning of the story, when of course, who is most in danger at the beginning of the Exodus story? Who do the midwives come to save? What decree do we learn about at the very start of the story? That the Jewish boys, that it's decreed that Jewish boys should not be allowed to live, right? And so this is a promise from God that not only will they be allowed to live, but all of the bearing of children will be allowed to go forth with blessing. Now the verse from the teaching that I'd like to lead us down the road of. Et emati ashalach lefanecha, v'hamoti et kol ha'am asher tavo bahem, v'natati et kol oyevecha elecha oref. I will send out my terror before you, This is in that vein of sending out things before you, sending out the angel. Now God is sending out terror before us. V'hamoti et kol ha'am asher tavo bahem. And I will also give as hamoti, I will give my a sense of panic. It's a synonym. I'll say more about that in a moment. Before any of the peoples who come among whom you come, right? You approach these people, I will send fear among them, and I will place among your enemies at kol oyevecha elecha oref. What is oref? Oref, you're pointing to it. It's the back of the neck, right? The backside of one's neck. Okay. Before we determine what oref means, before we determine what oref means in this particular context, before we determine what oref means in this context, I want to point out that this verse is actually a threefold poem, a miniature poem, and a set of parallels, okay? This is my interpretation, no one else's. What's the first part? Et emati ashalach lefanecha. I will send out my fear before you. What's the next part? What's the next piece of parallel? What means almost exactly the same thing as that? I will send forth my terror before you. In the English, what's the next part of the parallel? I will, right? Just in exact parallel, we call this tikbolet in biblical and even early rabbinic literature, the notion of a parallel thing that really just means the same thing as the thing before it, which means we might learn that the third part itself is also a parallelism. Vinatati et kol oivecha, and I shall put into or place among all of your enemies this oref, this neck. So what does that seem to be? Are we talking about an actual neck? What could it, if we were being literal, what might it mean in regards to a neck? Yeah.
I think it would mean that they turn to run, maybe?
Okay, great. I think it's dancing in the world of symbolism, and it's the world that Ibn Ezra is going to dance in. But I agree. I think it means something about turning their back, and therefore you would see the neck. Any other way this could mean something literally? V'natati et kol oivecha elecha oref, and I will somehow give place your enemies before you, oref. There's one other hidden meaning that we're going to get to that is delightfully spicy, and we'll get there in a minute, getting to the literal meaning of the word. So Ibn Ezra goes in the direction that you were going in for just a moment, having to do with the back of the neck, and says, what does this mean? Hu pachad b'neshama. This is a soulful type of fear, soul fear. Is there a way we can say that in English? Like soul, like it chills you to your soul. Do we say that? Not really.
Shook me to my core.
Shook me to my core, right? Something like that. Like it's core shakingly scary. Vehine tavo laguf cholasha meyad. And then immediately, this is giving us a hint at the teaching we're going to look at in Sota. And in fact, pausing just for a second in this, I did break my rule. I typically stick with just chronological order. So really, Ibn Ezra may know the text that we're about to read after this, and may have learned from it, but believes that it's not just a pachad b'neshama, a fear that's in the soul. Also, the body immediately follows and becomes kind of weak, right? The body goes, is there a way we say that about what happens when we're in fear in English? Do we have a saying like that? Like the body, I went weak in the knees. That's the one I was trying to think. Yeah. Shiver me timbers, that's even better. I love that one, right? So something about the soul fear and the body fear immediately follows. V'zenatati et kol oivecha elecha oref. This is what's meant by this phrase, that I'm going to place some sort of this oref into your enemies. Shitnu lecha et orfam. I'm going to give you, meaning I'm going to give you, I'm going to turn them away from you so that you can see the back of their necks. V'hata'am shivrechu mipanecha berotecha otam. And that is, they're going to, as soon as you look at them, they will flee. You give them one look, and what's going to happen? First, they're gonna be filled with anxiety and fear and panic. That's what the verse means. Second, their bodies are gonna go weak, or shiver me timbers, they're gonna go weak in the knees. Okay, great. Now for a Gemara that I think is remarkably parallel to the way that we describe bodily fear or embodied fear nowadays. It's in the middle of a telling of a story. Some of you are smiling because you already read ahead a little bit, I assume. And this This is the middle of a story about what happened. The Gemara imagining, as it often does, that a multiplicity of miracles took place in the course of a singular day. And it often uses this language, bo or a kamanisim, right? Go and look at how many miracles nasu ba'ot were done for the Jewish people, were done for them on that day. Avru Yisrael ta Yarden. Israel went across the Jordan River. Okay. Uvau lahar grizim. They got to this mountain, har grizim. Ulahar eval yoter mishishim mil. They got so far. Okay, it's more than 60 mil away. This interpretive piece that's interpolated from Steinsaltz says from the river. The point is they went really far. The ein kol bria yechola la'amod bifneihem. Kol bria. What is kol bria? What's bria? Creature. Excellent. I like that translation. Right? In this case, it's not related to briut, but rather something that is, it's using the word bara, created, right? And so it's any sort of a creature, exactly. Not a single creature could even stand before them. V'chol ha'omed bifnehem miyad nitraz. And anyone who stood before them immediately, what is nitraz? Diarrhea. Yeah, they pooped their pants in fear, right? This is the exact meaning of the teaching. They were so scared. What happened? Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, I'll censor it for the podcast. I won't translate it. They did something, right? And it was their entire body releasing. Now, before I finish teaching this text, would you say that this is an experience that feels distant, like it's happening to a people, and would never in a million years happen to human beings nowadays? Or would you say that this is very relatable? On what scale? Like how close is this idea? Would you say like you understand what they mean, or I have no idea what they're talking about? You understand? Okay, great. I also understand. I understand what they mean. Right? Weak in the knee, shiver me timbers. Your whole body goes weak, and you can't even hold in your bodily function. Shene emar et ematia shalach lefanecha v'hamoti et kol ha'am asher tavo bahem, etc. Okay, here's my question though. How did they get that from Oref? Anyone have an idea? I had to do quite the deep dive. In what way? No, it was not a hint, but gross. Yeah, thank you. No, I had to do a dive into this word oref and araf, a place where we see that word, according to both Jastrow and BDB, the place where we see that word turned into a verb is taraf, as in the drippings of dew. So they get this idea that literally the body will drip with fear. Okay, literally the body will drip with fear. Yes, Jay. Right, and what does that mean? What's Kishinu Oref? How do we translate that in our Machzor? I don't remember. Anyone else remember? Yeah, it's like, I think stiff-necked is how we translate. And there, you're welcome to pull a Machzor off the shelf and see how we translate it. Because what are we in a baby drash for if not? Kishinu Oref, I think we do say a stiff-necked, we were stiff-necked. In that case, are we talking about anxiety or fear? Probably more like stubbornness, right? So, but the neck seems to be a source of major emotional connection. Okay, I want to take us to a completely different part of our story. Turn to the next page. Take a look at Breshit. We're looking at the very end of the story. The context is blessing. Who's blessed at the end of the book of Breshit? Who receives blessings? I'll give you a hint. There are like 12 of them. Yeah, the sons, exactly, right? And so we're going to look at the blessing that is received by Yehuda. Yehuda ata yoducha achacha, yadcha be'oref oivecha, yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Let's have a vote. Poetry or not poetry? Raise your hand if you think it's poetry. I think it's poetry. Anyone think it's not poetry? Anyone else they need to dive deeper into the text? Okay, let me see if I can treat this like a poem. Just like we treated the last verse like a poem. Yehuda, your brothers will yoducha. What is yoducha? Related to the word hodu, not turkey. Thank, right? Well, thank. Your brothers will give you praise. Yadcha, your hand, be'oref, oyevecha. Your hand is going to be on the oref. What did we say? The neck of your oyevecha, your enemy, your enemies. So your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be, what's that image? The hand on the neck of your enemy.
It's, I mean, if you have a sword and you were gonna strike someone, that would be where you would strike them with the sword.
Right. So you have access to the most vulnerable part of them. If you had a sword, you could strike them down in one swift order. And finally, Yishachavu lecha b'nei avicha, your father's sons, poetically saying your brothers will bow down to you. Where did we see that image before of your brothers bowing down to you? In Yosef, in the dreams, right? The brothers not bowing down, but now it's turned and it's Judah. And Judah is the one who his brothers will bow to. Why are his brothers bowing to him according to this verse, according to the plain meaning of this verse? Why will Yehuda's brothers bow to him? Just according to the plain meaning of the verse. Yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Why? Judah has the power to defeat the foes. Judah with the hand on the neck of the enemy. That's right. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you not to answer it until we read through the Chizkuni. Who is putting the fear of whom in whom, right? Who's fearful of whom in this particular scenario? Think about that for a moment. We're going to go to a commentary from 13th century France, from the Chizkuni, who adds this. This is Yehuda ata yoducha achicha lashon nofel al halashon klomar yishabechucha v'yichabducha v'ka'asher yiru sheyadcha be'oref oivecha az yishtachvu lecha kamo lamelech. We're going to skip the brackets for time purposes. So your brothers are going to come and they're going to praise you or acknowledge you as a leader. And this is a bit of a play on words because Yehuda is synonymous with with being the great and the head. Who is Yehuda? Yehuda is the lion, and Yehuda is a stand-in for all of like the Jewish people. Okay. Because this will happen when they see you, Judah, subduing your enemies by holding on to their necks. So who is afraid of whom? In the Chizkuni's read of this verse, who is afraid of whom?
Brothers are afraid of Judah.
The brothers are afraid of Judah. In turn, there's a secondary, I think, correct answer to this, which is who is also afraid of whom? Who are our enemies afraid of now? They're also afraid of Judah, right? Because he's got them by the nape of their neck. So Judah is putting the fear in the foes, and therefore his brothers look to him and they fear him. They have this praise-fear relationship with Judah. They perhaps look up to him, but also it's quite fearful. Now, we're going to make a sharp left turn from this idea. After I ask one question, we're going to go into a set of texts that seemingly are disconnected, and I promise to do my best to connect them. Why are his brothers afraid of him? Why are Judah's brothers afraid of him? What is the source of their fear?
He's the oldest.
Okay, so he's got that older brother energy and is scary. According to the verse, what seems to be fear-inducing about him? His strength, his physical strength. Why do we tend to fear people in general? What are we usually afraid of in life? Externally, I mean. That they will lash out? Oh, that they will act out, okay. All right, well, who will act out, the foes or the brothers?
In this context, I'm talking about Judah. In other words, the brothers would be worried about them doing something to them, perhaps because of his past behavior, perhaps because
Right.
of very recent events, or perhaps, since there's no timeline here, something that will happen in their future, our past.
I didn't even think of it, thank you.
That's too complicated to get into. And I'm not sure it's right.
No, I love your take on this, and I think it goes down a path that I'd like us to contemplate as we go into this next set of verses. So what I hear as your take is they might be afraid of his brother because his brother is demonstrating tremendous strength, a scary amount of strength, so scary that the foes are afraid of him. And now they might in turn find that Judah is very scary to them, because we know that when people are fear-inducing, when people are strong, when people demonstrate to us that they're willing to use their hands to do physical violence, that can in turn lead us to believe that we, under the wrong circumstances, could find ourselves in the position that we see somebody receiving their physical brute mighty strength at that time. Did I get that about right?
That's the first half. The second half has to do with, I think, Haftorah, recent Haftorah, so.
Great. We'll go down the road of a recent Haftorah later. I like your first take because I think it gives us something excellent to think about as we move into these final verses, which have to do with tefillin. And fortuitously and coincidentally, Rabbi Kligfeld offered a teaching earlier this week that I'm going to circle to in just a moment to Bat Mitzvah Sally Kurtzer, who came to put on tefillin for the first time this week at our daily minyan, that goes to the meaning and the definition of what tefillin are. So I'll get there in just a moment. First, a verse. We read from Shemot, we read from Bereshit, now something from Devarim, from Deuteronomy. V'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz ki shem Adonai nikra alecha v'yare'u mi Mecca. All the peoples of the earth, of the land, shall see that the name of God is called out and proclaimed over you, and therefore, I'm adding the therefore, they will see you and they will fear you. They will be in awe of you, because who's on our side? God's on our side, and therefore they're going to fear us. Okay, so a teaching about tefillin. Both that verse and this teaching from Talmud Menachot and another one that's buried in the next story are all leading up to the story in English, which we'll get to in a minute. So I'm preemptively telling you, I'm going to ask for a volunteer to read this story at the bottom of the third page in English, but not yet. So think about whether you're willing to read. I'd love to hear another voice than mine. Menachot 35b. V'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz, this verse that we were looking at. Ki Shem Adonai nikra alecha v'yare'u mi Mecca. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, Omer. Elu tefillin sheberosh. Okay. And all the nations of the land will see that God's name is upon you. This verse we just looked at, it was taught in a Braita that Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, the great, said, what is this in reference to? Tefillin sheberosh. What's that? The head tefillin. Now, in order to understand this story and the next, you need to also know that there was a long time among our people when tefillin was not just worn during the daily service. When would people wear tefillin? When would men mostly wear tefillin? All day long, right? With the exception of when they needed to take it off to be in a an immodest or a dirty place. Other than that, they would be wearing their tefillin all day long. So this is the notion. Read it back in for a second. If this is tefillin, what are the people of the land seeing that is making them afraid?
The Batim, presumably?
They're seeing the housings, the actual tefillin on somebody's head, and it's making them afraid. What's on the tefillin? They're black boxes typically. And what do we see on the outside of a tefillin? A shin, and what is the shin reference to? To the name of God, or to the countenance and being of God. So this idea is they'll see God's name written on the outside of these things, these amulets that you're wearing. And how are they going to feel? They're going to go, yikes, right? So shiver me timbers, exactly. Back to shiver me timbers. They're going to go, yikes. Okay. Vasiroti et kapai v'ra'iti et achorai amar Rav China bar Bizna. And then in turn, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, Milamed Shahara'a lo Hakadosh Baruch Hu lemoshe kesher tefillin. So in citing a verse that I will remove my hand and you will see my back, who's speaking in that verse? God is speaking to Moshe in that verse. And Rav Chana Bar Bizna teaches in the name of Rabbi Shimon Chasida that who showed Moshe their tefillin? God. God showed, and what part of the tefillin? The kesher. What is the kesher?
The knot.
The knot of the tefillin. Now, marry the first part of this story to the second, the first part of this Gemara, the Reisha to the Seifa. People are going to fear us because they see God's name is written on the amulets that we wear going through the world. They know God's on our side. Now, read that into the second part of this. What was God doing by showing Moshe the Kesher Tefillin? Potentially scaring him. Is that a relationship that we see between God and Moshe? Awe and fear?
Yeah.
Maybe, sometimes. And by the way, what part of God is Moshe purportedly allowed to see according to our text? Only that back of the head. All these texts have in common this notion that one of the most vulnerable and also fear-receiving and fear-inducing parts of our body is the neck, which is interesting, my own take on this also, that then I think the notion of keeping a knot of amulets on the back of your neck, one that would induce fear, is potentially exactly why one will wear an amulet, for a sense of protection. This notion of having a knot at the back of one's neck, which is of course such a vulnerable part of the body. But when God shows off that kesher tefillin, that knot at the back of God's neck to Moshe, presumably, according to this Gemara, according to this particular Gemara, this is a moment of inducing fear in Moshe. Okay. Did you think about whether or not you'd be willing to read the next bit out loud? It's all in English. This is a story that was told to me and a story that was told to that person, a story told to another person. I wrote it down as best as possible.
There is a famous story that occurred within the Vilna Gaon. This happened when he was traveling incognito during a self-imposed exile. He was staying at the home of a wealthy man. One morning, they were davening shacharit in the man's home. The Gaon was praying in an inner room when all of a sudden he heard a ruckus in the outer chamber. He ran outside and found hoodlums roughing up the people in the minyan. When the ruffians glanced at the Gaon, they were seized with terror and they ran for their lives. The Gaon's host looked at him with wonderment and asked him quizzically, "Why'd they run away from you? Is there something that I don't know about you?" The Gaon said simply, "They fled from my tefillin." The host retorted, "But I'm also wearing tefillin." It was then that the Gaon pointed out a simple inference from the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer says that tefillin generates fear when they're in the head, not when they're simply worn on the head. The Gaon explained that he integrates in his mind the lessons of the tefillin.
There's a pause there in the story for just a moment. Thank you for reading. Okay. In this story, what's the scary situation? Hoodlums in the shul, the name of my next murder mystery after my next sabbatical. I'm too close for comfort, right? Because, of course, this notion that people would come in, ruffians, I like that translation, from a Yiddish source, by the way. Ruffians came in, people who weren't supposed to be there were there, and they were causing bodily harm to the people who were in the minyan. That is a scary situation. And what stops the scary situation from happening? What disrupts that scary situation? Or who? The tefillin of the Gaon of Vilna. And why were the tefillin of the Gaon of Vilna so different from the tefillin that the guy who owned the place, who presumably was the Baal, the host and the master of this Shachrit minyan? What was different about the way that the Vilna Gaon wore his tefillin?
It says here, he integrates in his mind the lessons of the tefillin, which to me means he was thinking about what was in the tefillin.
He was thinking about what was in the tefillin, because of course in all of these texts we can doubly read the phrase tefillin shebarosh or barosh. It could mean, what do we think of? It's the tefillin that are on the head, but the Vilna Gaon says no, these are about the tefillin that are in the head. This is about the text and living the tefillin being inside of you. Now, coincidentally, as I was looking at this text, on Thursday morning, Rabbi Klickfeld taught beautifully about this notion to Sally, the bat mitzvah, and you'll tell me if I don't get this quite right, but looking at the translation of tefillin themselves, what tefillin seem to mean, what I'm just feeling that the totafot, this notion of the amulets seem to mean, according to dictionary definitions and digging in on this idea of totafot, the totafot, of course, being one of the phrases that we use to describe these amulets in our core Shema texts, which in turn are inside, right? It's all meta, it's inside the tefillin. What those seem to be are penetrative. They seem to be piercing. They seem to be meant to be something that goes in. Am I missing any part of that definition? Oh, penetrative? Okay, great. On that notion of penetrative, the Vilna Gaon goes on in this story to tell a very frightening but powerful story about the way in which tefillin were conceived of, not just by him, or rather, maybe it is just by him, maybe it is his own conception, but it is the notion that tefillin are not just about putting them on a head, but rather putting them in your head. So Joey, will you read the rest of the source?
Yes. In Masechet Eruvin, we learn the story of Elisha Bal Knafayim. It relates that the Romans made a decree that anyone who wears tefillin,
Yitakru et
mocho, his brains will be pierced. This is a highly unusual decree, since normally kings say off with his head and not pierce his brains. However, when the Romans understood that the main idea of the tefillin is not to simply don them upon the head, but to put the message inside one's brain. Therefore, the punishment was to fit the crime, and one's brain should be pierced.
Whoa. So according to the Vilna Gaon, according to Masechet Eruvin, in this amazing story that we didn't have time, I didn't bring it as a source, right? I think I ended it there, yeah. I knew we would run out of time, and I'm gonna wrap here. He understood that even the Romans understood that tefillin were not simply this thing that you had to put on as a garment. We already have several other things we simply put on our body as garments. We've got the covering of our head, which teaches us about a sense of dignified modesty before the Holy One. We've got what other garments? Right, a talit, and a talit katan, if you want to be a little bit more parallel to this idea of wearing tefillin all day, the notion that we might wear fringes to remind us of what? The mitzvot, the commandments, they're supposed to be fringes. We learn in those same paragraphs that are kept within the tefillin, right? This idea of these paragraphs related to these totafot, which are meant to be penetrative things, not just amulets worn on the outside to show other people, but rather something that penetrates within. And this goes to the heart of the teaching about Vilna Gaon and why it was that those hooligans were so afraid of him and not afraid of the innkeeper. Because this story is meant to teach that the thing that is possible, but we don't always think about as being possible, is the notion of being feared for being a good person. The notion that your love, this ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, being in a loving relationship with God, would be so powerfully inside of you that the way that you would live your life induces fear, not because, like a Judah, your hand is on the neck of your enemy, and therefore even your own brothers find themselves shaking in their boots because they know that what you can do to someone else, you can also do to your own brothers. We know they did in the story. But rather that the way in which you live your life, the way in which these totafot are penetrative to you, the way that the Vilna Gaon wore his tefillin may have looked on the outside exactly the same as the innkeeper, but he was such a good person. I like to read back into this story that this is a tongue-in-cheek way that the Vilna Gaon was, in some sort of miraculous and perhaps unrealistic sense, able to diffuse the violence because he approached with the spirit of goodness and godliness within, right? What are you doing? We don't know he doesn't go on to tell what the story looked like and the exchange. We're missing the exchange between him and the other people. But he certainly doesn't win over the situation by being the kind of person who has his hand on the back of his enemy's neck. Instead, he wins over the situation because of the way that the totafot, the way the tefillin, the way that these amulets it's not the amulets themselves or the name of God that's causing fear, but rather the way that he is and the way that he shows up in that space and in all spaces. So I leave you with these teachings about the challenging teaching about the notion that fear can in fact be induced by being such a loving and God-fearing presence that we actually cause other people to not want to end their harmful behavior because we are present in that space, because of the goodness that we represent in that space, and because of the way that the words of those paragraphs of the Shema enter us and how we show up in the world. And if you want to be a little less Pollyannish about it and say, well, someone's goodness is not certainly going to stop the violence that's taking place in the world, at least this is a text that argues that a constant sense, a physical constant sense of closeness with the divine is in fact the kind of protective thing that will keep us even from physical harm. That the notion of being in relationship with God will somehow, in perhaps a metaphysical sense that we don't understand, but that the Vilna Gaon purported to understand, that kind of closeness and relationship to God allows for one to induce a sense of fear out of goodness and not a fear out of brute strength. All right, with that, we are going to do Birkat Hamazon, and then we'll do a Kaddish Rabbanan in honor of the teaching, and we'll do Mariv. Did somebody have bread who would like to lead us in Shir Hamalot and the invitational, the Zimun? Joey, go for it.
Shir Hamalot B'shuv Adonai et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kechol Amim Az Yemale Sechok Pinu Ulshonenu Rina Az Yomeru Vagoim Higdil Adonai Lasoti Mele Higdil Adonai Lasoti Manu Hayinu Semechim Shuva Adonai et Shivitenu Ka'afikim Ba'negev Hazorim Bedima Berina Yiktoru Halachelechu Vacho No Se Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Verina No Se Alumotav Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi Vivarech Kol Basar Shim Kochel Elam Va'ed Va'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'ata V'yad Olam Hallelujah Hodu Adonai Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chasto Mi Amalel Gevurot Adonai Yashmiya Kol Tehilato.
Before you do the invitational, Joey, just wanted to let people know, Safari had tricked me, and in the English somewhere on the second page, there is a full name of God. I changed the names of God, but then in the English translation, there's still a name of God. So we're not going to be disposing of these in a typical sense, rather in the Gediza. If you want to keep it, please keep it, but if you aren't keeping it, please deposit it over your line in Palestine, and I will take care of it.
Chaverein Avarech. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach Me'ata V'yad Olam B'Yirshut Chaverein Avrechel Hinu Shechal Nemishelo Baruch Eloheinu Shechal Nemishelo V'Tuvo Chayinu Baruch Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hazan Et Haolam Kulo B'Tuvo B'chein B'Chesed U'Vrachamim Unotein Lechem L'chol Basar Ki L'Olam Chasto Uvtuvo Hagadol Tamid L'Chasar Lanu Ve'Ayechsar Lanu Mazon L'Olam Va'ed Ba'avur Shemo Hagadol Kiwelzan Farnes Lakol Umetiv Lakol Umechin Mazon L'Chol Beriotav Asher Bara Baruch Atah Adonai Hazan Et Hakol.
First do Kadisha Rabbanan, page 38, and then I'll announce the page for Mariv.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם לעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידיהון, ועל כל תלמידיהון, ועל כל מן דעסקין באורייתא, דיביאתרא הדין ודיבכל אתר ואתר. יהי להון ולכון שלמה רבה, חינה וחיסתא ורחמין, וחיים אריכין ומזונה רוויחה, ופורקנה מן קודם ובהון דיבשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועושה שלום מרומיו וברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Lane 264, please rise. After the Baruch Hu, you can be seated.
ברוך הוא יכפר ועון ולא ישחית ורבה להשיבה פה ולראות כל חמתו, אדוני הושיע. המלך יעננו ויום קוראנו, ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה למקום אשר ברבו מעריב וערבים חכמה בתשם. ומעביר יום ימי בלילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו החי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים עבד עולם בית ישראל. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, והם נגע יומם ולילה, ועבדך תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ויאמר אדוני משה רבנו. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, באמונה כזאת וקיים עלינו, כי הוא אדוני מלכנו ואין זולתו. ומלכותו רצון קיבלו אליהם משה ונס ולחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולה מי כמוך בעלים אדוני מי כמוך הדר בקודש נוראתי לא ספל מלכותך ראו בניך בוקעם לפני משה זה אלינו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השגיבנו ואדוני שמעתנו ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום יתה ביד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל עד ברוך אדוני לעולם ועד ימים ברוך אדוני בציון שכולם ברוך אדוני ברוך אדוני ביום ברוך אדוני בלילה ברוך אדוני בשעה בהם ברוך אדוני ביאה ברוך אדוני בשעה החיים יום עד יום אשר כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו יתגדל ויגדש שמי רבה ויעלמד יברך וטבעם נחמר וטבעך וביום יכון וחדך ובית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם לעלמי עלמי יברך וישתבח ויתפאר שמם ונעשה ויתרא ותלך ותלש ונקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן
Page 279.
Yikadav yikadav shemer rabba. V'yalam adi vrachate v'amlich machute b'chayachon v'yamechon u'chaydacho beiti shal b'galav zman kariv yimruamein. Yehi shmer b'amavarach. Le'elam ha'mayamai brach v'ishtabach v'yidpartram v'nasei v'tadav v'talav t'lash v'nekudusha richu. Le'elam min kol brachata v'shirata tishukata v'nechmata damiran b'yalama v'yimruamein. V'hinu amarana Eloheinu leinu maseh denekona leinu maseh yadeinu konanehu yoshe b'seit elyon b'tzel shadai lanan. Omar l'Adonai machsim asurati lo hayav tapaki yatich. Ki malachav yitzavelach l'shmor b'chol drachach al kapayim su'un chapein tegol b'evin al ha'shachal k'etin Yikra eni ve'anehu imo enochi v'tzarach al tzev yachab de'u orech mim asbiyehu v'arei b'shuati orech yamim asbiyehu v'arei b'shuati.
Turn back to 216, second paragraph on the page.
Kadosh Yoshev Tilo Yisrael V'Kara Ze El Ze V'Yamar Kadosh 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 Anai Tzvot Malachar Tvodah Mekapli Name Name Vatisa Eini Ruach Va'eshma Charai Kol Rach Gadol Baruch Adonai Mimkom Adonai Melech Le'olam V'En. Yirat Salam V'Fenech Adonai Eloheinu V'Levatenu Shishmar Chokev Olam Hazeh V'Neskev V'Nechayim V'Nereh V'yivtechu v'chayidei shemecha ki lo azav dodor shechar Adonai chafetz l'man sid ko yagdil Torah v'yadir Yidkadav yigadav shemer rabba Yamad yivrachotei v'amlich ma'otei b'chayachon v'yom echon u'chaydecho beit Yisrael b'galav yizman kari v'yimru amen Yehi shmer rabba mevarach le'alam le'almei amayai brach v'ishtabach v'yitparch v'mavit ha'sev v'tadav v'talav v'talash v'nekudusha richu Le'yelam yikol brachatav v'shiratav v'rutav v'nechmatav damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen Tikabel tzoton avaton d'chol Yisrael kodam avahon di b'shmaya v'yimru amen Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim alein l'koyesho v'yimru amen Oseh shalom v'yimrumav Uyaseh shalom aleinu V'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen Aleinu l'shavech l'Adonai kol ha'teigu l'aliseh v'chol aleinu Lifnei melech malchei melachim hakadosh baruch hu Hashem v'yaseh ma shevekro b'shamayim Kakatuba Torah Tachanai Loch Lelam Ve'Eben Amar V'Haya Adonai Lamelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad
282, Mourner's Kaddish.
Yitgadal V'Yitkadash Shemer Abba V'Yalama Divrach Yerute V'Yamlich Malchute V'Chayechon V'Yomechon V'Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael V'Agalav V'Zman Kari V'Yimru Amen Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevarach Le'olam Le'almei Almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yithadar V'Yit'aleh V'Yithalal Shmei Dekudesha Brichu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechamata Damiran B'Alma V'Yimru Amen Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen Oseh Shalom V'Ramav Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen
Name, please rise for Hatikvah.
Kolod balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homiya ufatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Od lo avda tikvateinu hatikva bat shnot apayim liyotam chofshi be'artzeinu eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liyotam chofshi be'artzein Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim
Almost Shavua Tov, everybody. Yashar Koach, Rabbi Klickfeld for leading us in Mariu, and also again for laning this afternoon. A reminder that both tomorrow morning and Monday morning, because of the federal holiday, will be at 8 a.m. For our Minyan will be at 8 a.m. and evening Minyan, I think at this point is at 5:25 starting Sunday night. Is that right? I think it's 5:25 starting tomorrow night. Please help us to make Minyanim. I think that's it. Let's do some Havdalah. Yanai na nai 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 yanai na nai nai yanai yanai na nai 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 yanai nai nai Hine al Yeshuati Eftach velo efchad Ki ozi v'zimerat ya Adonai v'yehi li Yeshua V'shavtem mayim v'sason Hine Yeshua L'Adonai Yeshua Adonai Tzevaot Imanu Niskav Lainu Elohei Yaakov V'Sela Adonai Tzevaot Ashrei Adam Lo Tayafach Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneinu V'Yom Koreinu LaYehudim HaTorah V'Simcha V'Sason V'Ikar Kein Tiyeh Lanu Kotze Yeshua Teisa Uv'Shem Adonai Yekra Yainenai 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 Savri Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Peri HaGafen Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Minei Besamim Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Borei Ha'esh Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech Ben Yisrael amim Ben yam hashvi'i L'shesh yemei ha'maseh Baruch Atah Adonai Mavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Chatoteinu himcho Zareinu v'chasveinu yarvei yarvei kachol V'hakochavim v'layla Zareinu v'chasveinu yarvei yarvei kachol V'hakochavim v'layla Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hatishbi Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hahiladi Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hatishbi Eliyahu hanavi Eliyahu hagiladi Vim Herayavu Leinu Imashiach Imashiach ben David Vim Herayavu Leinu Imashiach Mashiach ben David Shavua Tov, everyone.
I have a good recipe.
Shavua Tov, Gary and Marlise.
Shavua Tov, Tybal.
Always a pleasure hearing you. We don't do this enough. We've had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, but it's nice seeing the two of you together,
Ah,
shoulder
that's
to
fine.
shoulder.
Shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, and our son
Yeah.
is here too.
Oh, nice.
And our dog is here too.
Yeah, oh, foster dog. Yeah, so
Oh, wait, we're still on the recording.
That's okay.
Oh,
okay.
well.
We won't say anything that confidential.
Well,
No, but now they know you were shoulder to shoulder. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Oh, we were trying to keep it secret.
Yeah. How was your tuba shop?
How was what?